Today we have great news for Tesla stock. It is up 5.34%. As I predicted earlier, there are multiple companies that want to adopt the Tesla charging standard. In this case, Rivian decided to follow through and work with Tesla, and Rivian will be using the Tesla adapter starting as early as 2024. But it doesn't just stop here. Hyundai is also considering joining Tesla's North American Charging Standard Alliance as well. And if you thought that good Tesla stock stories stop here today, no, they don't. Tesla just signed another Megapack deal, and this one is not small at all. These will be supplied for a location in Western Australia. 224 megapacks, that's a lot, and that would be equal to almost 9,000 cars at 50,000 each. So that's a lot of revenue and a lot of profit. Here's another way to think about it. Imagine Tesla beating the delivery estimates by 9,000 vehicles. Well, this is basically what just happened, in a way, you could say. It is just that Wall Street has not recognized that megapacks are really important to Tesla's business, but the time will come then they will figure it out. Like how Wall Street right now is figuring it out that, yeah, the supercharging business for Tesla actually has a material impact. It doesn't have a big impact if you know that Tesla will solve full self-driving, but if you assume that full self-driving is never going to be solved, which is what most analysts believe, then the supercharging revenue that will come from more cars that will use the Tesla charging standard, yeah, that starts to add up. And if all of this was not enough good news yet, well, one more company will be adapting the Tesla standard as well. So no wonder why the stock jumped up over 5%. This reminds me of January, and I remember a few days when Tesla stock jumped up about 10%, like for example, on this day here. The market probably likes this news as well. Elon Musk will meet the Prime Minister of India today to discuss setting up a Tesla manufacturing base in India, potentially. At least this is what we think it is going to be about. And this is interesting. Consumer Reports, they announced that Tesla Model Y is now the best car for families. Except it's not Consumer Reports, it's Auto Trader. This is what Consumer Reports should be saying. This is probably also helping Tesla stock a little tiny bit today. Elon is pretty happy. Super exciting work happening at Tesla in AI software, chip design, and robots. Nothing fundamentally different, of course, but it just helps the sentiment a little bit, I think. And we have Tesla FSD Beta 11.4.4 rolling out to customers. I'm still on 11.36. I'm gonna go check if my car has a new update. And here's more jaw-dropping Tesla stock news, and I do mean jaw-dropping because look at this inventory drop. Wow. This one is for the US, and Europe actually is not entirely too different. Check this out. It also saw a pretty big drop as well. Now, are these vehicles all sold? I don't know. This is a huge drop, and did Tesla start advertising? I don't think there's any major advertising campaign going on or major promotion. Maybe I'm missing something. But I don't know. Maybe Tesla is just moving cars around, or maybe they changed how they display new inventory. I have no idea. But if these cars are actually sold, this is one of the most bullish things I've seen this whole month and the previous month, and maybe perhaps even this year, because in one day to have a drop like that, whoa. If this is not just Tesla playing with the inventory numbers to trick us, Tesla stock investors somehow, or maybe we're just changing their websites, updating their websites, I don't know. But if this is actually a real drop in inventory, then I would expect a huge backlog or multiple price increases. But I think it's a bit early, so that's why I do not want to lead with this in the beginning of a video. So be a little bit careful here, but it looks very good. The owner of the site says that you may want to take these latest data points for Tesla's inventory with a grain of salt, but I also checked another site which shows Tesla's inventory, and the data is basically the same. This one is tesla-info.com, but it could very well be that Tesla is changing how you could scrape all of this data, and therefore these inventory trackers right now may not be as accurate as before. So again, take it with a grain of salt, but it could be something big. We just don't know for sure right now. There will probably be a lot of people talking about this later today on Twitter, so check Twitter today if you'd like to see what's going on exactly. I'm a bit in a rush today, so I'm going to report further on this issue tomorrow. We have new numbers from China. This time they are okay. 14,500 for last week. The previous week, before this last week, was 16,400. So a little worse than the previous week, but still, it's a pretty good number. It's not a bad number, but it's not a great number. But this chart, I think, is by far the most important one to really understand how well Tesla is doing in China. As long as we are above this white dotted line, we are doing very well. And clearly we are way above that line. We are more above that line now than the previous week. James says that the delivery number based on insurance data in China was as expected, and at this pace, he says, we will hit 150,000, and that would be a new record for China. 150,000 would actually be really good, although there are some that say that they just reduced their China estimates. And if you haven't seen this interview that I posted yesterday, the main point from this really was Elon said that he sort of thinks it's not really a bad idea to build in France, and also he likes the president of France. And the reason why he said it's not a bad idea to build in France is because when you, for example, tell someone who lives in the US, let's say, do you want to come to France to work here? Do you want to come to Paris? Who would say no to that? The city is wonderful. So it's easy to attract talent, which I think if you run a smaller company, which the businesses I own are relatively small, you don't really think about that. You think of a big, huge city or a country that has a lot of regulation and all you see is trouble. But the way Elon thinks is, how do we attract the best talent? We don't care about regulation as much. We don't care about taxes as much. We just care about the absolute best talent. Can we attract them here? But I'm not really that convinced that Elon will follow through with this and actually build a gigafactory in France. Maybe he will eventually, I don't know. But that would be a little bit of a surprise, because I would assume that the next factory that Elon will build in Europe, if you're talking about a gigafactory that produces cars specifically, that factory should probably produce the next generation vehicle. And Spain for that just makes more sense, because they would be able to communicate a little bit easier with the factory in Mexico because they speak the same language. And Spain is the second largest vehicle manufacturer in Europe after Germany. But France's automotive industry is also not small. Check this out. In 2019, France made 2.2 million vehicles. Spain did make more, but not by a crazy amount. In 2019, Spain manufactured 2.8 million vehicles. So definitely quite a bit more, but not like twice as big or anything like that. So France is, I think, being seriously considered by Elon. And maybe Elon, instead of building a factory that will make cars, maybe he will just put a Megapack factory in France. And Alexandra, who lived in France for, I think, if I'm not mistaken, for over 2 decades, she really does not like the fact of Elon potentially building a factory in France. But if it's just a battery plant, then I think she's not as opposed to that idea. So maybe that's what Elon will end up doing. And this is an interesting piece of news. On Tuesday, today, Tesla urged the US administration to finalize stricter heavy-duty emissions limits, arguing the rapid pace of electrification of larger vehicles should result in larger pollution cuts and more EVs. EPA should actively embrace a more rapid transition to battery electric vehicles, and that the time for doing so is now, Tesla said. And here's an analyst that says that GM and Ford are not competitors of Tesla. Let's take a look.
Let's turn to a note catching our attention today, and that's Deutsche wrapping up its Global Autos Conference and publishing some key takeaways on the state of the industry. The bottom line, automakers, they say, are optimistic, consumers not slowing down, and major automakers could even be primed to beat and raise next earnings season. Joining us today is Deutsche's lead auto analyst, Emmanuel Rosner. Emmanuel, great to have you. It does sound like the tone, you argue, is pretty optimistic.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Carl. So we had close to 50 automotive corporates last week at our conference, and the tone was optimistic across the board, but certainly from these traditional automakers, GM, Ford, Stellantis, essentially saying, look, the consumer is not, hasn't weakened. We're not seeing a weakening in autos demand. Prices have held up really, really strong. Incentive have only crept up a little bit. And so far, so good, essentially, right? Demand is there, pricing is there, and that should result into really solid profitability like we've seen so far. No real reason to be worried about, the second half. Now, it's clearly a positive surprise versus, I think, ingoing expectation. Most investors would expect prices to moderate, eventually, and I think the companies do as well. But it doesn't look like it is happening as we speak, which could indeed set up for probably pretty strong second quarter earnings from these guys, as well as potential, upside for the full year outlook.
That's pretty interesting. There had been some who argued that the EV strategy for both GM and Ford was just going to be too expensive, the adoption curve too shallow. They'd have to make some tough choices on the ICE business versus the EV business. It sounds like you think they were pretty stubborn in their commitment to going forward with it.
Certainly, we've seen a fairly decent amount of, doubling down on ICE as well, right? I think we've seen many, billions just announced over the last few weeks by General Motors for the future generation of pickups and SUVs on the combustion engine side. So I think they're managing their cash cow extremely well, but also aware that they need to invest in electrification. There's still a lot of investor concerns around the profitability of it. Both GM and Ford have had issues, getting them produced, really, but mostly doing that profitably. But their message is very much, we're at it, we're taking cost as fast as possible. And also, we're going to be pretty opportunistic. Look at these, partnerships announced over the last couple of weeks with Tesla to essentially enable their users to use the charging stations from Tesla. That's a way for GM and Ford. In a way, it's a bit of a capitulation, but it's also a way for them to save on CapEx and reduce their own costs and boost adoption, of the EV technology among their customer base. So I think overall, the message from these automakers is very much, we're at it, we're committed, and we're having some traction. Certainly, they will need to execute against it.
Did I hear that right? They are doubling down on their internal combustion engine vehicles. That is not going to age well. Maybe in the meantime, in the short term, they will make more money, but in the long term, that's going to cost them a lot.
But did you have Tesla at your conference? Because wasn't the concern that they just control the market when it comes to pricing and have been lowering prices repeatedly, which will ultimately hurt the profitability of their competitors because they have to follow?
Yeah. So we did have Tesla at the conference. They were not, presenting, but certainly hosted a lot of meetings with investors. I think that's exactly right. I think message is we will remain nimble on price. And essentially, this is one of the main levers that they have in order to keep boosting demand. And obviously, Tesla has very strong growth aspirations in terms of how many more vehicles they want to sell. In order to sell those in a potentially softening market, they would, be looking to lower prices, accordingly. Our view, though, has been that the direct competition to Tesla is not really the GM and Fords of this world. GM and Fords really make their money from pickups, from SUVs, from very large vehicles, which are extremely profitable. And that's going to be their strategy in the EV world as well. I think that's where Tesla is essentially cutting prices, is Model 3s, Model Ys. These are smaller sedans, smaller crossovers. There's no real direct competition or overlap, with GM and Ford. So I would worry much more about, maybe, Japanese automakers, Korean automakers, Chinese automakers that are competing directly, with Tesla in the models where Tesla is cutting prices, rather than, the GM and Ford in terms of the direct Tesla impact from lowering prices. But certainly on Tesla itself, this is an absolute risk. I think further price cuts. I'm not sure to what extent the market is very much ready for it. The demand is there, the deliveries are there, but the risk of price cuts is certainly something we're very mindful of.
Wait, is he saying that he thinks that Tesla will never make a pickup truck? Or perhaps he thinks that the Cybertruck will not sell well at all. And even if you believe that, why wouldn't you think that Tesla cannot just make a regular pickup truck that looks like a normal pickup truck? Tesla can definitely do it. So to think that Tesla will not obliterate that market in the long term, I think is a little bit silly. I was in a rush today, so I didn't really spend much time editing today. So there were a lot of more ums and uhs, and I didn't really do second or third takes. So let me know if that's annoying down in the comments. And if it is, then I will make sure when I have time, which is usually on most days, I will make sure to maybe do either a second take or just try to speak right the first time. And if it makes no difference to you, please leave a comment down below. It does make the videos a little bit longer though. I'm rushing today because I have a dentist appointment. My wisdom tooth started hurting yesterday like crazy, although it doesn't hurt today at all. But a few days ago, it was really hurting, and then the next day it didn't, and then yesterday it did, and today it doesn't, so it's a bit weird. But my dentist a year ago said that I would need surgery to get it removed, so I'm not sure what will happen. Maybe I'll need to take a few days off for making any videos, because I don't think I would be able to speak well, probably. And YouTube says that you should watch this video next, but if you haven't seen this video in which I talk about why Tesla board members are now buying more Tesla stock, you should watch this one. My name is Matt Posius. Like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching.